Do penguins have wings? So last night I was watching this documentary and it was about some location in South Africa. And there's a few things that made me think about a few other things. And then I went and I searched and I was like, hey, do penguins have wings? I was thinking how weird and odd penguins are. I mean, they're birds. When people think birds, they think flight. There's a certain thing. If I just tell you, imagine a bird in your mind. Since you were a kid, what do you imagine as a bird? One of the key things most people actually think of with birds is the actual ability to fly. Now, which bird do you think we actually, as humans, come into contact with the most? You might think, oh, it's some kind of sparrow or some other bird that's flitting around, some hummingbird. No, it's chickens. And chickens themselves don't fly. I guess they have some gliding. They can fly a little bit. I've seen some actually leap and fly a little bit, but they've lost their ability to fly. They're technically a land animal, a land bird. But when you look at birds, there's many different ones. There's land birds like ostriches, these massive birds just run around. They're really creepy looking if you actually see them close to each other. Just those eyes. I would have some memes with the ostrich just staring. I might try to put one up on the screen. There's just a meme just sit staring. It's creepy. And they're massive. They're huge, like dinosaurs. And then it goes back. The dinosaurs are technically sort of avian, sort of birds. They said like T-Rex and some of these dinosaurs might have actually had feathers on them. But I was sitting there looking at these penguins, and it's like, that is an awkward looking creature. And then, where do they live? What does a bird do? What are the actual features of these things? What are the differences? What makes a bird a bird? I mean, right here, this is a bird that spends most of its time in water. There's no actual, even small ability of actually flight. I know there's this whole name, this whole category of birds called waterfowl, and that like counts like ducks and geese and seagulls, I think, things like that. But I'm like, those aren't waterfowl. Those are kind of like surface fowl. They kind of float in the water, swim a bit. They're more like amphibious. Not even amphibious, because what would be the three ones? They can live on land, they can swim on the water, they can fly in the air. Tetraamphibious? I don't know what kind of word you'd use for them. But birds are birds. Is it just the beak? Is that what defines a bird? Is it just feathers? Do penguins have feathers? Because I'm watching this thing in South Africa. And then when you also think of locations, you think South Africa. Do people think South Africa and think the kind of animals you'd find there would be seals and penguins? Or do seals and penguins normally make you think of places like Antarctica, places that are a lot colder? But then, hey, in South Africa, it's pretty far down there. So they're kind of entering that Arctic or Antarctic kind of temperature and things like that. But yeah, there's penguins that live there, there's seals that live there. Now you look at the seal itself, its body shape, it's kind of like cylindrical and things like that. And it's similar, somewhat similar to the penguins. The seals have those tiny little flipper legs and things like that. And so I decided, let me take advantage of just this amazing access to information that we have and try to confirm some of these random questions that you have, because there's so many oftentimes we have a random question in our mind right now and that question kind of just goes there, we file it away. When we have access to the internet, we have access to this wide trove of information that thousands, probably millions of humans have actually contributed to and put up there available for us. And I decided, let me actually read some of these. I'm going to be reading this article anyway. Might as well read it out loud and see if some of you would prefer to also just listen to me read the thing, because some people prefer taking things in audio form. It is more the traditional way humans have shared information, by telling stories, by talking to each other, rather than reading, which is a rather recent convention. Okay, so I'll have some more to say after this, but this is the article called A Penguin Does Have Wings, but they are called flippers. This is by The Spruce. So there's going to be a link below to this. This is from Melissa Mainz, updated on 12/08/19. Okay. Watching penguins in the natural habitat or in zoos, it's easy to believe that they don't have wings at all, since they don't fly and their swimming motion most closely resembles that of fish species than other swimming birds. In reality, penguins do indeed have wings. But because of the way these appendages are used and how they have evolved, penguin wings are scientifically regarded as flippers. Much the way ocean mammals, such as whales and dolphins, have evolved leg-like appendages into swimming flippers, so too have penguin wings evolved into flippers to facilitate swimming. This specialized form of wing has a unique shape, structure, and characteristics that make it perfect for underwater use rather than for aerial flight. How flippers and wings are different. Very few birds have true flippers, but all penguin species do. Their wings are flat, thin, and broad with a long tapered shape and a blunt rounded tip. Because of this severe streamlined shape, penguins cannot fly, but they are powerful, agile swimmers and adept underwater hunters. Unlike other swimming birds such as ducks, swans, and geese that use their feet and legs for primary underwater propulsion, penguins depend on their flippers for propulsion. Penguins' feet and legs are used principally for directional changing or braking underwater, and they are ungainly and clumsy appendages for land use. Unlike the wings of flying birds, penguin flippers can only be moved from the shoulder. The elbow and wrist are almost completely fused, which gives the flipper more power and strength in the water but limits its flexibility. This adaptation allows faster swimming and movements, such as porpoising, as well as helping the flipper to still function effectively without risking injury in the high pressure and resistance of water. The shoulder is also less flexible than the shoulder of most passerines, the most common class of flying birds. Penguins cannot lift their flippers straight up into the air or reach well above their heads or over their backs in the way that flying birds can. These movements are essential for flight, but would waste energy and create excessive underwater drag for swimming birds. Penguin flippers do have feathers, but rather than the primary and secondary feathers that are critical for flight, the feathers on the flipper are smaller, shorter, and more densely packed. This helps streamline the wing to minimize underwater drag and provide superior insulation to protect against cold. Flippers also typically have countershading coloration that is light above and dark below to help camouflage the bird and water so it can approach prey more easily. This coloration also helps the penguin avoid its own predators. How penguins use flippers. In addition to being essential for swimming, flippers are also used for communication among penguins. These birds will pat or tap each other's flippers as part of their courtship behavior, and flipper slapping or waving can be used to show aggression, agitation, excitement, or dominance. For locomotion on land, flippers can help penguins propel themselves when tobogganing, it's a weird word, tobogganing on the ice. When running or hopping, flippers may be held out from the body for balance. And on cold nights, the flippers can be held tight to the body for better insulation and to conserve body heat. Other birds that almost have flippers. While penguins are the only birds that have true flippers, other pelagic, which means open sea, birds that spend a good deal of time swimming also have some flipper-like characteristics to their wings. Puffins, morays, and auks all have wings that more closely resemble flippers, but to a lesser degree than penguin wings. Because their wings are also similar to flippers, these birds, while they can fly, are generally ungainly in the air and may appear clumsy or awkward in flight. Their flipper-like wings help them be much smoother and more graceful in the water, and they are powerful swimmers and efficient underwater hunters. If they feel threatened by predators, these birds are more likely to dive into the water than to take flight to escape. Some other bird species are adept at using their wings underwater, but are still agile flyers. Dippers, anhingas, and darters are all excellent swimmers that use their wings for underwater propulsion, but are also good in the air. Their wings show few aquatic adaptations, and while they are useful underwater, these birds typically only swim for short distances or in more limited capacities. They may use their feet more predominantly underwater than penguins do, and are able to easily switch between activities. In general, the more time a swimming bird spends in the open seas, the more pelagic it is, and more its wings resemble flippers. Freshwater aquatic birds generally have more adaptable wings with fewer flipper characteristics. So that's it. And there's a lot of different things on this site. The birding, getting started, what's an aerial bird. It's called the spruce. I think the spruce is a type of bird. I think it's a site about birds. And you can check it out. There will be a link below to it. And that's some information touching on some different things. But why did I want to discuss this and some other thoughts on this? It was in that show that I was watching, they were just showing the different kind of... It was documentaries, first of all. Documentaries have stepped up their game. Some of you are having a lot more time at home to actually watch things. Go check out documentaries. And for some of you, you were watching documentaries when you were much younger, then you got into jobs and got into work, got to other responsibilities in your life, and then now you have some more downtime, unfortunately, due to the situation of it. But check out the documentaries, and you might be very surprised of how they've just stepped up the game. So this was covering the entire Cape region, the Cape Town, I think the Cape of Africa region. So they're covering plants, they're covering interactions with lizards, they're covering these certain birds. These birds that give birth to like one chick at a time, the chick gets massive, and then these birds fly over the ocean and they do this crazy dive into it, this amazing dive. And you see the wings, rather massive wings, and when they get close, they squeeze their wings together and tighten them until they're just like a spear darting into the water. Then they swim into the shoals of fish and get a fish up, and they fly it back, and then they chew the fish and it's in their gullet, and they go sit there, and the baby chick comes up and it's just trying to munch up the actual, trying to munch the food by putting its head basically with its long beak down the throat of the parent as it's trying to get the food. And it's just weird type of things. You're looking at these things, and when these birds finally try to fly, they try to jump off these short cliffs and they fall into the water, and they're learning how to use their wings. And then all of a sudden, these seals come out and they're eating the seals. They're eating the baby birds and things like that, those chicks. And then back in the seal place, they're talking about how the mother seals give birth to just one pup at a time normally, but then they have to leave to go hunt and things like that. And they normally come back and they suckle the pup for about, what's it called? They suckle the pup for about 7 days. Then they go out for like a week hunting. Then they come back and they do this for a while as the pup gains weight. But during this time, they said 20% of the pups die because it's still Africa, apparently, and the rocks can get really hot like a griddle, and then the water itself is still freezing because you're down in the Arctic kind of area. You're down to that really cold area of water. So that difference and not having actual waterproof or waterproof fur in some way, it's a weird thing. The seals get in there, and the seals could die in the water. They show this one female seal trying to come up, this female pup trying to come up and trying to get some help, and then all the other seals are not helping. They're like, no, we don't help you. We only help this one seal, only our kid. That's the only one we invested. And like, look at this community where they could actually just help these other seals, and then it wouldn't be 20% of them actually dying. Then the mother ends up coming back to the main male pup that was the center of this thing, and then the male pup was on the ground just dying. And I'm also wondering, when the people are watching these and recording these, you're not allowed, there's this kind of oath that I guess the documentary people make where they like can't actually go in and help the animal. They just have to be an observer in some sense. So the male pup is on the actual rocks, dying from the heat, like very close to dying, as they're saying. And then the mom comes in, and she apparently has a call that is only her, that it sticks out of all the other calls to that pup. And then that pup calls back, and she can also hear that sound by itself and recognize that voice, and they come together. But just seeing this cycle of life, seeing these different animals, starting with this penguin, and just how my mind works. I'm looking at all these things and being like, look, what is that parenting technique? How is that parenting technique with that bird? This bird probably parents in a different way. Most birds will have a situation. I think when you say how do birds feed their young, I think most people think of the bird in the nest, this much smaller chicks, a couple of ones that hatched from an egg, and then the bird actually comes in and gets food from whatever it is, worms or things like that, and then the birds kind of sit there with their mouths open, little chicks, and then it just goes off into their mouths, and then by the time these chicks leave the nest, they normally just fly, or there might be some kind of mental image you might have of a small baby chick falling from some tree branch onto the ground and then trying again and eventually flying. You're not thinking this massive eaglet type of thing that's bigger than the parents, sticking its long and beaked neck and head down the throat of the parent, down the gullet and things like that, as the parent goes out and dives into the ocean to get fish and things like that. And then it's learning not from actually falling from branches, but falling from a cliff into the water, to the seals that are there eating them, the seals who sitting there on the beach, just all of them, there's just hundreds of them. So it's not like this animal is abandoned. It's not like how the turtles just leave the actual kids in the sand and then disappear, and then the kids go into the water and find their way. It's like, no, these other seals, these adult seals, are just sitting there on the ground as all these pups just die. Like, why couldn't one of the mothers be like, hey, sis, just look out for my kid while I go out and hunt? But they don't have that in that culture. They don't have that communication ability. It's not something developed. You look at penguins and you're like, well, it's a bird. It's still a bird, right? but it swims, it never flies. It looks like it has fur, it looks like it has all these things. And then one of the things I think that really piqued my interest was the female bird, the female penguin, was needing to be impressed by trinkets. The male was looking around the area and getting these rocks and sticks and things like that to try and impress the female, and she seemed unimpressed. Then the male is kind of walking around looking, and then again, there's a bunch of them here. There's a bunch of penguins, like with their kids and things like that. They're fluffy kids. I like how fluffy the penguin. I don't know what they're called. Penguin chicks. They're probably still called chicks, but you see them. This male penguin looking around for things, and then he's digging. He's trying to pick out some branches and things like that. And then there's a nest, an abandoned nest, and he goes in there and pulls out some of the trinkets or some things that are in there and takes him to the female, and she seems happy with that. And the other penguins, there's no security there. None of the penguins are like, "Hey, you're stealing from that home." Like, it's where's the penguin police? What would it be if there actually was some kind of developed thing like that? And I was thinking of, look at these animals. When we look at animals, we can tell and we can understand that different locations change what that animal is. That animal adapts to that location. When it comes to animals, the general animal kingdom, we tend to put humans out of it. Because when you look at actual animals in the animal kingdom, their changes are normally more directly physical. You can see them, you can see it in behavior, the way they move, the way they look. It's clearer for some to see. But humans are also animals and we also adapt. Our adaptations are more mental. It's more societal. It's more of a construct in that sense. But these adaptations are as definitive as the adaptations that you see in a penguin versus a chicken versus a hummingbird versus an albatross. But these are all birds, but they change a lot due to where they live, how they live, their parenting styles, their societal styles. We see those in the behavior things, yet I think we lose that when it comes to humans. Just like there are some humans who are like, look, if I leave, take care of my kid, and that kind of culture is better. There also are some cultures where they just don't do that. There's some cultures where they're like, I don't care. If your kid is hurting in front of me, I don't care. If your kid's going to die, they're going to die. And that's how it was for most human society in the past and in some places today. Part of the reason they have a much lower average mortality rate, that whole situation where they say, oh, in the past, the average age of mortality was like 55 or something. Or you look at certain countries right now in developing countries and you see, oh wow, that's really low. It's like 60 and things like that. It doesn't mean those people genetically can't actually live. They were so different as actual humans that they couldn't live to their 80s and 90s. It's just that so many of them died during childbirth and in their childhood. They didn't make it past the year 10. They didn't make it past 5. So you're counting all those people into the actual birth rate. A lot of the people, a lot of the women who were actually giving birth at that time, a lot of the females that were giving birth were doing it in very young ages. We're starting in their teens and we're probably done with giving birth in their 25, around that age. And then you didn't have the medical advances at that time and people were dying. Communities didn't really care that much for each other's kids. There might have been smaller clans and towns like that, but then there were big battles and wars where you'd come in and just wipe out other people. There were situations where, hey, the winner wins, and then the winner ends up killing all the kids that are in this area, and then goes into starting reproducing with their own children. There was all these situations that just changed the way humans behaved, and that human being is not even, it's almost an entirely alien creature to your average human being today. Despite the struggles that we're going through right now with this pandemic, despite the differences that we see in different cultures, and again, one of the things that I think is very positive from this pandemic is that it's going to prove as a sort of cultural, societal Rosetta Stone for the human species, for Earthlings, for just human society. We're going to be able to have one thing that we can unite on and refer to and discuss and compare and contrast different ways of doing things and say, hey, in this situation, in order to actually deal with something that's a threat to pretty much all life on Earth, at least all human life on Earth, how do we best address this? Are we better able to do this if we do XYZ? Are we better able to avoid this if we do QPR? Are we able to better actually recover from this if we do LMNO? Things like that. I think those are the things that I'm actually thinking will be able to be done off of this. And a lot of this is subjective, but they are actual answers. Can a chicken live as well as a penguin can in a penguin's environment? No. Can a penguin live in a similar way as an ostrich does in its environment? No. They're all birds, but there's certain adjustments and things they have to do to better deal with the different environments that they're in. This happens with humans too. So, what is a human? Does a human have wings? No, a human doesn't have wings, but humans have flown higher than any single living being that we know of due to our ingenuity, due to our ability to come together, share information, learn, teach, work towards a similar goal, and just achieve just amazing things. And we need to look to that and embrace that and encourage that because that's how we're going to lead to new steps. And one good story I actually heard about coming out of this rather dark times, a lot of bad news out there, but on May 27th, there's going to be finally the first manned flight of a SpaceX capsule. I think they're going to be using those amazing rockets. I had a separate video while watching this. I was watching a live video and giving a reaction to it of those rockets that actually shoot up into the air and then they land back on Earth, and then they can be recovered and refurbished and used again. And this is cutting down the costs of spaceflight in an amazing way. And for a long time, there haven't been any manned flights leaving from the United States of America. And this is a private industry, private company with, I guess it's partially private. People say, yes, he's getting a lot of different deals from the government, but he's giving money back to the entire US government and things like that. And this is Elon Musk I'm talking about. He has some questionable things in his personal life, doesn't seem to be able to handle that stuff, but maybe part of his genius is inability to deal with just average normal life and things like this. Anyway, so SpaceX is going to be taking 2 humans into space, and this is a big momentous time. I think it's going to be a big thing leading forward to dropping the cost for this, and this is going to benefit all humans. It's going to immediately benefit SpaceX. It's going to immediately benefit the American people, but we all are, just like penguins and our birds and chickens and all these things are all birds, and then they all live on Earth, and there's ways to benefit Earth and harm Earth. This is going to benefit all humans. I hope you guys watch it. I know I'm going to be watching that. Let me know what you thought about this penguins thing. I'm going to be doing some other readings and then just talking about other things around the readings. That's it for now. Links below to the merchandise store if you want to get some stuff from there. There's different designs I post up. There's a series I have with chickens that you might get. I think I'm going to use that as the one that's on the screen right now. I heart something something. Let's see if you actually get those. There's also PayPal for one-time donations. But for now, what I would really appreciate is if you actually like or dislike if you didn't like the video, and let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I really enjoy interacting with the people in the comments. Till next one, goodbye.